Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Smart Meter Solutions Forum. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you have some important takeaways and learn some things from this forum. Just to let you know, we will be most likely, because we were not expecting this many people to sign up for the forum, and we're so glad that this many people would like education on this topic. So we most likely are going to host these more often. We're shooting maybe for every couple of weeks. So if anything does not get answered during this forum, we'll be sure to answer it during the next forums. So I'm Jenny DeMarco. I co-founded Virginians for Safe Technology, which is a grassroots consumer rights organization. And our mission is to protect current and future Virginians' rights to safe and responsible technology. We have a couple items and disclaimers. I'm going to try to talk fast because we have a lot to get through, and then we'd like to leave a lot of room for Q&A because I know you guys have questions. So please keep your mics muted so that way there's no random background noises when the speakers are talking, and we can hear all the good information that they have to say. Marianne Tierney, who is here today, is one of our speakers. She has a hard stop at 11 a.m. We're going to try to stick to 11 a.m. If we go a little bit over, there will be a recording of this call. And like I said before, we'll try to get to as many questions as possible after Mary and Marianne speak. This forum is for educational purposes only. Please know that we feel mitigation and decisions regarding your utility meter are personal decisions, and we are not telling you what to do at all. We're just providing the information and suggestions and support that you may need to make your own decisions in your own home, especially regarding whether or not to sign the opt-out form here in Virginia, which we'll also briefly go over today as well. And please remember, we're going to be mentioning a lot of mitigation solutions. The efficacy of these mitigation devices and solutions of electromagnetic and radio frequency radiation can be very dependent on the environment of the source or sources of the EMFs or RF frequencies. So some solutions may work really well in one environment or one home and may not work quite as well in another because it depends on some other things that are going on in the home. So just remember that. And one of the best ways, which I'm sure both of our speakers will touch on today, is to test before and after you use the mitigating solution. And one more note, we've gotten a couple questions because of this webinar. We have not given up on getting an analog opt-out here in Virginia. We're simply just providing this forum as a place for solutions for those who do not want to sign the opt-out form in Virginia, or already have a smart meter and didn't know about it and can't get an opt-out meter in time. Or here in Virginia, you're not allowed to opt out if you have a business, if it's on a business, or if it's on a farm structure. So these are just solutions for if you'd like to mitigate the RF and dirty electricity coming off of your smart meter because you already have one. But in no way are we giving up. In fact, we're in the background working right now, and I can't wait to share with you what we're working on eventually and some action items that we're going to have for you. So make sure to stay up to date if you want. You can join our email list at virginiansforsafetech.org. Okay, so with all of that being said, I am going to just share my screen really quickly. And I'm going to go over the options that we have in Virginia. And I already realize it's so hard to keep it under 10 minutes. Okay, so can everybody see that? I don't know what you can see and what you can't since I'm hosting. I hope you can't see the little bar at the bottom. I'm going to close us out. Okay, so here we have this on our website. This is a consumer graph that we created that has all of the options that we have here in Virginia. Obviously, the electromechanical analog meter is not an option right now, but we wanted to show the differences between the two-way communicating smart meter, the what they're calling a non-communicating opt-out meter, and then the analog meter. And so this is available on our website at virginiansforsafetech.org, and then /say-no. And you can download this, you can share it, but it has all of the differences. And basically we have two options here, and that's the two-way communicating smart meter and the non-communicating opt-out meter. We are right now going to be testing whether or not the non-communicating or the opt-out meter does in fact communicate, because many of them are installed with chips and have gotten software updates, which may have activated that chip inside and therefore making it a communicating meter. So I encourage you all to download this, and so that way you can see for yourselves what the options are here in Virginia. So with that, I am going to introduce our first speaker, which is Mary Bauer, who is a founding member of Virginians for Safe Technology. Mary's background is in RF, radio frequency engineering, working approximately 29 years, both as a federal employee and a defense contractor, mainly for the Department of Defense. And she gives national webinars and lectures on how to best protect yourself in your home from a world of electromagnetic radiation that is now literally everywhere. She also does a really good job of dumbing it down for me, so then I can communicate it to other people. So Mary, why don't you take it away? And I'm going to share my screen again once I get your slides up here.
Okay, just for everybody's knowledge, I'm going to set myself at 10 minutes because I tend to talk a lot. And we're on a sharp schedule here. So when you hear the analog bell, you'll know my time is up. Okay, do you have it up?
Yep, I do. Can everybody see this? And I actually think I'm on the wrong slide. Sorry. And Mary's going to be going through some of these quicker. So like I said, don't worry, they will be available on our website as well.
I'm hoping that, can you hear that ticking? I'll put it further away.
Nope.
Can't hear it? Okay, good. All right, so you could probably go to the first slide there after the introduction, because we already talked about the Fair Use Act, that this information is being used for educational purposes. And that's our contact information. Our agenda there is going to cover 4 topics. What does it do? The fact that it communicates, the fact that it records, and a big part of this is about how it interfaces to the ecosystem that they are developing for us as part of the grid transformation. This is the sleeper topic in the smart meter world that we are being exposed to, because everybody thinks, well, it's just that thing on the side of my house. It's much, much, much more than that. So we'll, develop this idea about the ecosystem throughout this pitch. You'll see it kind of interweaved in every topic we talked about. So these are the things that it does: a two-way radio, a data recorder. It also has the signatures of every electronic equipment you have in your house. These signature profiles are stored in a federal agency, I believe it's FTC, where they're stored. And this is how they know what you're using and when you use it. And you have to correlate data to do that. It's not just your electric meter, it is also your gas meter. They have an Itron module inside the gas meter that talks to your electric meter. So they are able to correlate data. And eventually the smart meter will connect to a 5G macro tower that's either privately owned by the electric company or part of AT&T or Verizon's network. The problem is that all these things are done to the power industry's safety codes, which is basically anything they want. And the codes that everybody else has to adhere to for building codes has no oversight. So you'll see that at the end there, the last bullet is safety and fire hazard without any building inspector or building code enforcement oversight is the main problem of these smart meters. They're not to code and they put us at risk. Basically, it's an incendiary device waiting to happen with some kind of problem, whether it be the insulation in your wires popping because they don't have proper surge protection. It's a litany of things. And we'll see that at the end of the presentation. Next. This just shows you the 2 frequencies that are involved. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to show you the blue arrows pointing down is where this fits into the electromagnetic spectrum. It's a very common frequency used by Internet of Things, the 910 megahertz and the 2.4 gigahertz. There are 2 different chips inside the meter, and we'll see that soon. Next slide. This is just the type of information that is captured, and basically for electricity consumption, but their overall goal for the meter interfacing with communications equipment is to not just record consumption, but also to look at behavior. That is really the end goal, because that's the marketing tool to, get inside your house and know what things you need and send you that information. So smart meters are more a marketing tool and for surveillance than they ever are to save us money. Next. And this, of course, is, a very interesting quote that was on the smart meter, stopsmartmeters.org. A smart meter is unwanted by consumers, devoid of credibility and mind-blowingly expensive, and an unjustified, over-engineered, and expensive mistake. And in the words of another person who is in the smart meter movement to get rid of wireless smart meters and replace them with wired ones, basically saying it's obsolete and an energy hog and a dinosaur. So it's not like it's advanced metering whatsoever. It is actually a dinosaur, an old equipment. And the next generation should be a wired connection because it would save a lot of electricity and be more efficient. Next slide. So this is the inside of the guts, and I know most people don't care about what's inside, but what's interesting to see is that green card there is the network interface card, and that little square 1x1 on the left side is the Zigbee chip. That's your 2.4 gigahertz chip. And the one that says the S5-MCMO, that's the lower frequency 900 megahertz that actually sends the data back and forth. And it's sandwiched in between the cover and the back. They call the socket plate. So that just shows you what we're dealing with here. So you can see in the batteries that are on the flip side of that interface card often leak, and you really should ask them to come out and do an inspection every so many years, because it doesn't take very long to have them leak, and when it does, it can actually make the meter explode and catch on fire due to heat. Next slide. So this just shows you what we're dealing with as far as what it looks like. The analog meter or the AMR meters that actually have, one antenna in them, have that mechanical rotating dial, and it has the 5, little dials, above the rotating one. And then the digital on the left has like a display where the digital numbers pop through. So sometimes you can think that you have an analog meter and you really don't. And you really have to be careful. If you say you want an analog, they may be giving you something that has an antenna in it, with which they call an AMR meter. Next. So this is one slide that I put up here because this is a pet peeve of mine about how Dominion does things. They install these hot, which means it's under electrical load. They're not supposed to do that. Puts the customer at a lot of risk, subrogates the liability of any claim for personal injury to the property owner. And you can't call and complain to anybody because DEV, Dominion Energy in Virginia here, makes a claim that they're exempt from the National Electric Code, which is what every other contractor that's licensed in Virginia has to abide by. They have their own set of codes, and nobody comes behind them and says if you're doing it right or wrong. This is really something that needs to change for our protection. And smart meters, the reason why they got this order approved to do them is because they say they save customers money, but we know that the dirty electricity that's produced by the switch mode power supply actually increases your bill by 10% because of all the dirty electricity and the voltage spikes, which are actually counted as something that is a cost they pass on to you, plus the use of electricity for the meter itself. So you'll never save money. And there's links there that you can check about the pricing. Next. Okay, I got about 4 minutes left. So this is the AMI distribution diagram, and all you need to know there is all the houses that you see there all go to that central collector site in the middle. If you are closest to this router that's on a pole, then your house may be one of the ones that is going to have this collector site. And these readings that come off of people's houses that have these collector sites, if they're not on a pole, really get very high readings from their meter, because all the relays from all these other houses are going through that collector site. And then you see to the right there with that dash line, it's going to a 5G micro tower or macro tower. And these may be privately owned by the smart meter companies, or they may just be any 5G tower, that's available for them to relay to. And eventually they go to back to the energy provider or to a data farm. Next. So this just gives you a little bit more visual concept of how this networking goes. And it's basically everybody is getting a hand in your data. Once it goes to that data farm where you see the repeater or cell tower there, that's the distribution point to these data farms, which Stafford County over here is getting. They're trying to plug for 4 of them in Stafford, so they're coming north from Loudon all the way down. And they're huge energy grabs on water and electricity. I mean, the water cooling for all these data processing cabinets is just astronomical. And a lot of the water gets evaporated in the cooling process. So it's just really a question of diversion of resources from people to machines, and it's quite a concern. Next. So this is a visual representation of what the mesh looks like. It looks kind of, you know, not too bad with all the little nodes there that all connect in some layer, canopy layer. It doesn't really look so bad, but then we see what it really looks like. You go to the next slide. It's a lot more densified than what it looks like, you know, at the top view. This is more like a side view. It's a lot more densified. It doesn't look so pretty anymore. Next slide. This is what you call secondhand radiation, by the way. This is a CAD CAM secondhand radiation map that was done in Salt Lake City from a university. I think it's the Arizona State University. So it shows you how dense that electrosmog really is. And it's quite alarming when you see it so visually graphic that way. We're immersed in this stuff. It's not just these little lines connecting from point to point. It creates a 3D dimensional mesh that just envelops everything that's around you. Next. Now this slide, I had this in another presentation. I really tried to take a really good look at it, and I came across something that I didn't find before. This is like a you know, cartoon diagrammatic of all the things. Whoops, there's my 10 minutes. Real quick, just look at the center.
No, it's okay. Take a couple more.
Okay, go to the center all the way up where you see the cloud and go directly to the right. And you see there's a cerebellum with a chip in it. I have no idea what that represents. You know, I guess it's medical implants or something like that, where they're connected to the cloud. It's just a big question mark, but you can see other things are visible. Like to the left of the cloud, there's a little cart there or something, and that's like an Amazon thing. And to the left of the cart, there's a satellite. But all these things that are on the terrestrial layer all move up in these canopies. So there's different layers of canopies, and you see the one right below the cloud there. That's like the main highway that's up in the air. So all this traffic is going on up in the air, but it's also going down, mirroring it in the terrestrial plane as well. There's so much here, it's almost mind-boggling in this one diagram. Next. So this is from Dr. Klinghardt. It's an old video, but I think it is so informative. I've watched this thing at least 5 times, and every time I go through it, I hear something else. But what really stood out to me is he identified the 3 top EMF exposures, and smart meters was number 1. And even though this is old, it is still pertinent today. I think it's at least 10 years old that he did this, and you can check me on that. I think it's 2012 in that time frame. So smart meters number 1, mobile or DECT phones number 2, and light bulbs, energy efficient CFL light bulbs. Now you could say, well, maybe that's been displaced by, you know, 5G. It really doesn't matter, because the 3 things these all have in common is they are inside your house. So you have to take control of your EMF footprint if you want to get any kind of improvement in your health status or your exposures, if you want to reduce them. And we're going to have just one slide on what he said about DECT phones. If you have a cordless phone, we'll go back just for 1 second. If you have a cordless DECT phone, definitely get rid of it. It's highly toxic in the home. And also, because he mentioned light bulbs, I included in here about the Itron smart meter communications with LED streetlights, because that's going to be the canopy probably at the 30-foot level. All the streetlights are going to communicate and become transmitters, and they are going to connect to your smart meters. So if you have streetlights, they may have already started doing this. I don't know. This is something I'm trying to find out in my neighborhood, if they have started to have the smart meters talk to the streetlights in your neighborhood. Something to check in with your board of supervisors or city council on that one. Next. So this is the study that Dr. Klinghardt had cited, which I think is a really good study for anybody on this call to look at, because it talks about the University of Athens study in Greece that identified 143 brain proteins that were altered by the use of DECT cordless phones and other mobile phones. over an 8-month period. And I've listed there what exactly it all does, about Alzheimer's. It affects certain parts of the brain, mainly learning and memory and other functions. And you can see there, they're listed to the right there, what the proteins are, upregulation or downregulation. But the bottom line here is, he said, the only way to get better recovery is only possible from avoidance, especially during sleep time. So supplements, exercise, don't even light a candle to avoidance. And I think this is a very important idea to really understand that, yes, you have to do your mitigation measures, absolutely, because you can't always avoid. But at nighttime, this is the priority. Next slide.
And Mary,
Yeah.
I think this might be a good time to pause because Mary Ann has to
Okay.
go at 11. So let's kick it over. Hold on a second. I'm just gonna do a quick introduction for Mary Ann, and then we can come back if anyone wants to stay on and listen to the rest of Mary's slides, or we can finish up on another call. But right now we'll head over to Mary Ann Tierney, who is a registered nurse and has a master's in public health and is the executive director of Safe Tech North Carolina, a nonprofit sharing why and how to use technology safely. She's certified as an electromagnetic radiation specialist with the Building Biology Institute and provides coaching, assessments, and mitigation of EMFs through her North Carolina-based company, Blue Ridge EMF Solutions. And then Mary Ann, why don't you just go ahead and take it away, because we want to make sure to get all of your good info in here.
Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate you working me in. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great that you've got such an awesome crowd today. So Mary has already hit the electromagnetic radiation spectrum, but what I want to say about this is that smart meter does include the very low frequencies of the electric field coming in, right? The smart meter is basically where the power comes into the house. So we're going to have electric fields, magnetic fields, radio frequency for that communication, and at least some dirty electricity. So we really have a pretty wide range of frequencies. And so I'm just going to very briefly clarify the 4 types of EMFs so that we're not rolling those in together. Electric fields are basically voltage in the air, and it comes from the power lines. It comes in on the meter, and it is all over the wiring. It travels in to the wiring in the home, and it can extend as much as 6 feet into the room, but at least a few feet. And the most intense parts of the electric field are about 2 feet into the room. And most of the health effects from electric fields are neurodegenerative and sleep related. The other thing that comes in on the smart meter, on where the utility comes into the house, is a magnetic field. And so my biggest concern when I'm evaluating someone's home is if they have a smart meter, if the power is coming into the home, whether it's an analog meter or an opt-out meter or a smart meter, where the power is coming into the house is where the biggest magnetic field is. And magnetic fields are well documented to break DNA and increase chances of cancer. We know that many of you have heard likely of children who got leukemia living under power lines. The same is true with a magnetic field in a home, which drops off with distance, but if your bed is up against the wall where the meter is coming into the house, 6 feet will probably entirely fix that, unless there are wiring errors in the house, and wiring errors can put a massive magnetic field into a home, and so wiring errors should always be checked, but we want to make sure to have distance from the meter also because of the magnetic fields, okay? There's dirty electricity that Mary talked about. It's very hard to measure the amount of dirty electricity that's coming off of a smart meter. There are many potential sources in a home. The power supply from a laptop, as I've pictured here. Wiring errors are unfortunately the biggest source of dirty electricity, or fluorescent lights or compact fluorescent lights. When wiring errors are fixed, dirty electricity will typically go way down. When fluorescents or compact fluorescents are taken out, it'll go down. And many LEDs are also dirty, but not all LEDs. And then there's some of these other sources that I've found. Really, the best way to measure what's coming in on the grid is to have a picoscope or oscilloscope that's measuring the spectrum, a spectrum analyzer. That's advanced equipment, but at very least, turning all the lights off in the home, unplugging all of the electronics, turning off the breakers for the well pump and a pool pump can then allow you to use a plug-in, a cheaper plug-in meter, and look at right underneath where the power comes into the hose in the home, in the closest outlet, what the dirty electricity is coming in on the grid. And then finally, radio frequency radiation, which many of you are already aware of and for which there are so many sources. So this is what a typical smart meter looks like, and I'm going to be totally honest. I am part of a team of about 55 electromagnetic radiation specialists with the Building Biology Institute. We meet monthly, some of us meet weekly, and of all of the smart meters, there are some brands that actually have much lower dirty electricity than others, and the Itron, which we have in North Carolina with Duke Energy, is got pretty much the lowest amount of dirty electricity coming off of it. So some of these are a little cleaner than others. There are also meters that are digital meters that look a lot like this, and while many people have those digital meters now, almost all the digital meters put off wireless radiation, or RF, radio frequency radiation. I'm going to call it RF. That RF is has less of a power density, less intense than the smart meter, but all of them put off something. If they have just been doing drive-by in your neighborhood to collect readings, there had to be a way for those readings to get from the house to that truck. And then this is a typical analog meter. What we are finding, a team of us are finding, is that there are some analog meters that now have a digital component built underneath it. And I don't have a picture of that yet. We're waiting on some colleagues to give us a picture of those. So you really have to make sure, if you do ever get an analog meter, that you test it to make sure there isn't some small dials on the bottom underneath it that are putting off RF. This is my favorite, very low-cost solution. And I learned this from my building biology mentors, Larry Gust and Rob Metzinger. Rob Metzinger owns Safe Living Technologies in Canada. So 2 layers of heavy-duty tinfoil, about 30 inches long, and wrapping it like a baby, wrapping that meter, and then securing it with HVAC tape, which is just, foil tape that you can get from your local hardware store. You have to have a small hole out the front or the side, depending on, like, if you have a neighbor that you like that's right across from you or whatever. You don't want to, it's basically, the RF is going to flow like light. And so wherever the light gets out, that's where the RF will get out. And it's just, all it needs is a small opening. As large as a quarter is all you need. Even as large as a nickel may work. But you want just a hole out that's going to allow that RF to flow out and get to the closest cell tower. I typically will make 2 very tiny holes at the bottom for drainage in case there is any rain that gets in. I have some clients that will make a little optional little roof over it, like with a piece of metal roofing and a little bit of wood support to hold up that little roof. Some people will just put a little black plastic bag over it and put the hole out, again, so it doesn't look so ugly, because if you live in a neighborhood with an HOA, they may not like this very shiny thing on the side of your house. But this is highly effective. for dropping a lot of the RF. On the back side, inside of the house, we put more foil. But the problem with foil on the inside of the house is that it is a reflector. And so if you're still using wireless devices in the home and you've got the foil up and then you're using your cell phone, it's going to bounce back at you. So one of the ways to reduce the absorbing or the reflecting is to use a material that's absorbing. So Less EMF has a material called MW for microwave, laminated microwave absorber. And they suggest using 2 layers of it, one layer and then the foil on top and then another layer. And you can do that in an area like at least 3 feet, but better to have it's about 6 feet wide. And then you can just hang something pretty over it. The alternative is that if you have the foil on there, if it's just fabric that's hanging over it or just a sheet or some kind of wall hanging, it's not going to reduce the reflecting property unless it's as dense as something like sheetrock. So some people, who live in an apartment, for example, and there's a bank of smart meters on the other side of their apartment, may put the foil up, may put sheetrock over that, and that can help. But this RF absorbing material called MW can be great at both keeping it from coming into the room and making sure, keeping it basically from coming into the room. It's an excellent shield. It's about $12 a foot at Less EMF. It's 48 inches wide. So it's a pretty big piece and it's pretty cheap as alternatives go. When I have a client with a smart meter in a bedroom and they're going to stay in the house for a while, I will typically recommend this smart meter guard, which is honestly the best one that any of us have seen that have used this. And it's called the Iron Maiden by a company called DE for Dirty Electricity, DEFiltersLLC.com. And the one on the left is about $550. It's expensive, and you also need to have it bolted on. And I found that I needed a handyman to help me with this at a client's house. But it's essentially a steel vault, and the RF can blow out this hole. And some of the versions of this have the hole out the side, like this other one on the right side. So the one on the right side is held on with magnets. It's more expensive, and Bill Bathgate, who owns this company, has had a harder time keeping this version in stock and being able to have the supply chain he needs to stock these. So the more expensive one is easier to take off and move with. It's easier to put on, but it's less available. And so I would, suggest if somebody has a smart meter in a bedroom and they can afford, $600 with shipping, I would suggest the Iron Maiden. It's not always available. Bill Bathgate tends to send my clients their Iron Maiden a little faster, so you're welcome to use my name to speed up any service. But this one is stunningly effective. Okay. And then if you put an Iron Maiden on, or you put on the foil, and it doesn't provide a signal, enough of a signal to the utility company in order for them to get your usage every month, then what we found as an alternative is to take one of these little pet collars, that's plastic, and cover it with foil and allow the RF to project out, and then secure it with the HVAC tape around the base of the cone, okay? So fortunately, I'm sorry, in most of these cases, 90% of these cases, a smart meter guard like these are going to allow enough RF to come out. But if it's a rural area and the signal is weak, having something like a cone that's covered with foil that can direct the RF out can be a good solution. One of you talked about, the smart meter guards that you can get off of Amazon, and unfortunately those have like a mesh over them, and sometimes the mesh effect actually will cause, sometimes some of the RF, the radio frequencies, will come back into the wiring of the home. The idea with the hole, with the foil, is that it has a place to go out. So the mesh can sometimes make it come back in. The foil with the hole allows it to go out. However, if you have a neighbor who's not sensitive, they don't really care about this, but you want to block the RF coming off of their smart meter, buying those, $60 smart meter guards that you can get on Amazon that are basically mesh can be a very nice thing to offer to a neighbor. My grandmother always said, you keep your relationships good with your neighbors and bring them cake so that when you have to ask for things like this, then you have a rapport. So anyway, cake and Amazon smart meter card would be great. Of course, it's important to measure this, right? And so there really are some smart meters that put off less RF than others, both in terms of the frequency of the pulsing and the intensity of the pulsing. Of the consumer meters out there, these are the two that I recommend the most. The one on the left side, the Safe and Sound, is actually, there's a new version of that called the Safe and Sound Classic 2. It's very simple. It doesn't have numbers, but it has ranges of numbers and more LED lights, and it's under $200. And then the Safe and Sound Pro 2 is almost $400 with shipping, but it's very sensitive and very specific. Both of these will go up to at least 8 gigahertz, probably 10, but they are tested up to 8, and they are highly effective. And where you want to do that measuring is at 3 feet in front of the meter outside, and then 3 feet inside. Inside, you can do it right up against the bedroom wall and then come back at 3 feet or right up against the wall in the house to see what's kind of ambient inside, and then what's at 3 feet. And the 3 feet gives us a better sense of what's realistic for the wavelength of radio frequency radiation, these particular frequencies. Right now, I don't get any kind of commission from this kind of sale, but SLT, Safe Living Technologies, is having a sale on these 2 meters. It ends today, 20% off. Normally, I get 5%, but this is a great spring sale that they have. Spring 2023 is their coupon code, and their website is slt.co. And I would just encourage you, if you have neighbors or friends who care about this and you can't afford this yourself, then ask a group of people if they'll go in with you so that you have the best meter that you can get, that you can afford. Mary talked about this earlier. StopSmartMeters.org is a great resource if you want to learn more. And I just want to share for just a moment that I shared this with Ginny. One of the things that I'm working on, and because Virginia is so close to North Carolina, I wanted to tell you all about this, is next summer we're hoping for those who are EMF sensitive to have a gathering that right now I'm just calling the EMF Sensitive Summer Camp, a celebration of well-being and belonging. And it'll be an opportunity to be with each other. We won't be doing any complaining. We won't be talking about symptoms. We'll be playing and having fun and sharing workshops and sessions on things that are healing and uplifting and good for mood, and music and positive stories and some good food and a chance to connect in a meaningful way with others who care about this as well. So if you are interested at all, please let me know on either my website, Blue Ridge EMF Solutions, or Safe Tech NC. We also are going to need, we're looking for a camp in Western North Carolina, and we are going to need somebody to help us front a little money to put a down payment down on a camp. We are identifying some camps right now, so if you have, you know, a little money that you can spare to help with a down payment, we would love it. And I do this with donations only, and so if you are up for sharing anything to help support this cause, Safe Tech NC, we have a secure link for donations, and we also have a lot of free solutions on there to deal with all the other wireless exposures that you can be exposed to. And that's actually my email, matierney@protonmail.com. I do home assessments. Chris Bonacore is my EMRS colleague who lives in Alexandria, Virginia, and he covers most of Virginia for those who need a home assessment. I do take clients in Southwest Virginia, usually within 3 or 4 hours of Asheville. So thank you for having me. Grateful for your time.
That was
I'm happy
great.
I can stay on the line for some questions.
Okay, thank you. And actually, if you could put your counterpart's information or name, I don't know if we've been in contact with him or not, but I know we get requests all the time for in-home assessments. So that would be great to be able to contact him.
Jenny, I can't access the my info right now on this computer, but
Okay,
he is Building Biology website. If you type
Okay.
in, you know, Building Biology Institute, and then Chris B. in Haymarket, Haymarket, Virginia, he will
Okay.
come up.
okay, great. We'll get his name out there.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark. Oh, hey, Mark. Yes, we have spoken to him before, I believe. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. That was wonderful. And we do have a question for you. So I wrote down some of the questions from the Facebook group. As I said at the beginning in the chat, if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat. We're not going to be calling on people. I think it's just easier this way because I also have some Facebook group questions and some emails that we got. So let's start with Jill King's question that she asked in the chat. There was two actually, Marianne. Can smart meter frequencies be negated by relocating the smart meter on a pole a distance away from the home? And she noted that the homeowner must pay full cost. And then the second question was, does wrapping the meter attached to the house stop RF from entering the inside of the house?
So, you know, when a meter is moved off of the home, any distance is going to drop the RF. Okay, so anytime we have distance from the pulsing, it's going to reduce the pulsing. It just depends on where the meter is relocated to. When I have asked, you know, I have clients that have done this. I have electricians I work with, and I've never seen this done for less than $5,000, and that is beyond the means of a lot of people that I know. And so that's great if you can do that. Wrapping the meter does reduce the majority of it from coming inside the house. But the slide that I shared about the MW absorbing material is what, along with foil, is what will keep the rest of it from coming in. So some will still come in, the majority won't, but shielding from the inside will help. If the smart meter is on a garage and there's a significant amount of distance to the living space, you don't have to worry about the bouncing effect. So just foil on the inside of a garage could probably be fine. But if it's inside of a living space, I would still, you know, try and I didn't clarify, it's the laminated MW or microwave reflecting material. The laminated version, this is carbon, it's basically carbon, and it can tear. And so the laminated version that's got plastic on both sides seems to have more resilience and not tear as much.
Okay, so Charles asked, how much does opting out to the non-communicating meter mitigate exposure?
So it depends on, what they choose for an opt-out meter. So the majority of the opt-out meters don't put off any RF. Again, it'll still put off a magnetic field. And again, you still need distance from the magnetic field. There are some opt-out meters in North Carolina that seem to be causing a vibration, quite honestly, of frequencies that are on the low end, but which have created some discomfort for some people. This isn't the case with all of them. Some people seem to have no problem with the opt-out meter, and some of us have had challenges with opt-out meters. So it's not a perfect solution, but it's a better solution. And some people choose to stick with the smart meter and put the Iron Maiden on or their own shielding on rather than the opt-out meter. So it's great if you can get an analog opt-out, and it's really hard to get an analog opt-out. We tried for many years in North Carolina, and we're not able to do that. So it's a mixed bag. There isn't a perfect solution to this, but we do the best that we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. It's not really talked about a lot because it's hard to describe conducted emissions that are actually running along your power cables. And this is specifically dirty electricity that is created by a component inside the smart meter called the switch mode power supply. And that's typically between 2 kilohertz to 50 kilohertz. It's very, very low frequency compared to what the smart meter puts off. So it would not be near those blue arrows that were on the electromagnetic spectrum. And you need a very special piece of equipment to clean that up. And Bill Bathgate sells them. It's either a DNA filter, which actually plugs into an outlet that you would put into the panel box. They're very expensive, but they're very effective. And also you could do a less expensive option, which is the sign tamer. No, the sign, it's not the sign tamer, that's for the router, but it's on his website. It's about $1,300. These conducted emissions are actually worse than the RFR. So you have to really, become very familiar with conducted emissions. It's typically called by lay people. The layman person would call it dirty electricity, but it actually rides along your power cables. And it's a separate whole way of dealing with dirty electricity than, the solutions that were presented here. It's devil in the details in this particular thing. And the only reason I know he sells these things is because I'm probably going to wind up buying one. I've been looking for a whole house solution to get rid of dirty electricity. And this constantly is cleaning that up as the electricity circulates throughout the house. It's a whole house solution, so it's a little bit different.
Thank you. And then Patty asked you to clarify, Marianne. She said, did I understand correctly, on the inside of the smart meter, the layers of MW absorber and foil have to be 6 feet behind the meter, or can I put that on the inside of the wall behind the meter?
Yeah, no, I meant 6 feet wide. So it could be as small as, 3 feet, but 6 feet wide behind the meter inside of the home is plenty of space. Some people don't have that. It's in a kitchen or it's in a strange place. At least 3 feet square, but yeah, it's inside of the house. I am going to clarify, the thing with Bill Bathgate is he's amazing, and he also is a salesman. So it's very important to tease some of this stuff out. And we never want to filter dirty electricity before we know there are no wiring errors in the house. So it's extremely important to make sure that there is a check for wiring errors before filtering is done. Because when any kind of dirty electricity filtering is plugged in, if there's a wiring error, it will amplify the magnetic field. And the magnetic fields are very well documented to break DNA and cause cancer. There are plenty of health effects that have been documented in case reports of dirty electricity or electromagnetic interference. There's multiple names for it. However, we have far more science on the effects of magnetic fields, and it's very important to eliminate sources of dirty electricity before it's filtered. Eliminate any wiring errors, checking for those. And the most affordable meter to check for magnetic fields is the Tri-Field TF2. The Tri-Field says it can measure electric fields and RF as well, but our experience is that it's very poor at the measurements for electric fields and RF, and I will typically get somewhere between 1/10 and 1/4 of what my other meters will get from the Tri-Field. But on magnetic fields, if you put the Tri-Field TF2 on MF, or magnetic field standard, it is highly accurate and right in line with my professional NFA 1000.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because even with the Stetzer filters that are very inexpensive, people just plug these in and they don't think twice about wiring errors. And there's a whole set of checklist things that you should go through before you attempt to do anything in your house. I've already done that, so I just wanted to caveat that, I should have said that, when I went to purchase this, I've bought all the filters out there. So I've already done the low pricey things. I'm very highly electrosensitive, so obviously I'm doing something that is at the top of the line in order to see if I get any relief. I have a lot of dirty electricity. My outlets actually play AM, FM radio stations through them. There's so much interference on my line. So of course, if you have a really dire situation, the amount of money you spend is equivalent to the results that you get. And unfortunately, if you're trying to protect your health and you're in a situation and you can spend the money, I would highly recommend Bill Bathgates. It's not for everybody, but he has a unique way of putting his material together that's very different than the other people, the other products that are out on the market. And I know they're very pricey, but they're also very effective. So I just wanted to clarify that. And thank you for bringing that up, Marianne.
And that's one of the reasons, oh, sorry, I just wanted to, just one of the reasons we had this webinar is because we wanted to provide solutions at all ends of the spectrum. So it could be a DIY and the lower cost ones versus, the expensive ones. It's really just where you're at and what you can do in this moment.
Right. A couple more things on filtering. One is that several of us have found recently that when plug-in dirty electricity filters are used with a generator, when a generator is powered, it actually blew the generator. So the Graham Stetzer, the Stetzerizer, Stetzer Electric, and GreenWave are now have disclaimers out, and several of us do, that plug-in filters should not be used when a generator is powered. And if a generator is on automatic, it will automatically come up when the power goes down, then those plug-in filters shouldn't be used at all. Some people have reprogrammed their generators to be on manual, and then attached to the generator itself and the power box a list of where the filters are in the house, so that when the power goes down, they can pull all those filters out and then plug the generator in. So that is one issue. One do-it-yourself way to reduce dirty electricity, besides checking with all of the lights out, all the bulbs out, all the lights turned off, and all the electronics unplugged and the well pump unplugged, or the circuit for the well, is when you find there's dirty electricity on the line, sometimes it is related to loose connections in the wiring. And William Holland is our premier EMF electrician who's based now in Arizona. And what he found is that when connections are loose on outlets and on light switches, that those loose connections can create interference in the line. And so a do-it-yourself, half a day with good music playing and turning all the circuits off and tightening up every single connection in the house can be a great way to lower dirty electricity in the home. Some wiring is what's called backstabbed, where instead of it being screwed onto a receptacle, it's stuck in the back, and you can still have the lights go on that way. However, it is not a good connection, and that's done increasingly when an electrician or an electrician's partner or assistant is being paid by the piece, and they're trying to get a lot done quickly. This happens often with large multifamily housing. So I'd encourage you to turn off your breakers and have a half a day of tightening up all your connections using an insulated screwdriver and some gloves and some good music and a comfort drink. I'm grateful to be with you all. I do have to leave. I hope that you have a good weekend. Thank you for having me.
Marianne, thank you so much for being here with us, and you can go to our website at safetechnc.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue with some more questions. I know it's 11 a.m. For those of you who want to drop off, feel free. We do have a couple more questions from the chat, and then we'll get to a couple questions from the Facebook group and the emails, because I want to address the questions that people took the time to write us. So we had somebody ask, I also have my gas meter has a radio type attachment on the front. Should that be covered in foil as well? Mary?
Yeah, it's a transmitter that's on the outside instead of the inside, and they sometimes use power line communications in those kind of meters too. It's just like as though it were inside. So I would say yes, but you'd have to make sure that you give it a path to get out, just the way you did around the face of the the meter itself that was covered up.
Okay, and then one question was, could you address the PLC meters? We're in a rural area, and that's the type they use here.
Yeah, so with PLC, I'm not real clear if they don't use them even on AMR meters. Seems like it's some kind of backup in the AMR meters in some areas. I don't think Dominion uses it, but if you put a whole house filter on there, I don't know how that consequence of filtering out the frequency that they may be using for PLC. I don't know how, what kind of consequence there would be from that. So I would not answer that question directly. I'm going to defer and do some further research on that, because our meters here in Virginia don't use PLC. Allegedly. Okay, that's what they're saying, they don't use them, but whether or not they do or not, you'd have to actually check that with an oscilloscope. So I'm going to research that question. Jenny, if you could just.
Sure. Yep, I'm writing them all down.
Yeah,
So
we'll
we
send
can
you an email when we find out, because the idea is, before you do any fixes, is to make sure you do your own research too, as to see if there is any consequence if you put a whole house filter in there. And just a caveat there, with whole house filters and plug-in filters, most of the equipment out on the market works with capacitors, like the Stetzer filters. Bill Bathgate's plug-in filters do not work the same way. So they convert the dirty electricity into current, and then the current actually, when it gets transformed into a different waveform to get rid of that dirty electricity, actually creates more dirty electricity to do it. So there's a consequence to the conversion of dirty electricity to current to go to ground. There's a consequence to that. And because I'm electrosensitive, I can actually feel that. when I plugged it in my wall, I could actually feel the consequence of that conversion, that dirty electricity right at the wall socket. Bill Bathgate's dirty electricity filters do not work the same way. He converts the dirty electricity into heat. So I don't think it would be subject to the same conditions that the other ones were, you know, when you put the generators on there. But, you know, I'm going to run that one to ground too and find out if there's any kind of exception. The only thing
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
I know that one of his filters is more effective when you have solar panels, and because you actually, the plug-in filters are more effective with solar panels because they attenuate the dirty electricity more than the whole house filter does. And when I say it's a plug-in, it's not the same kind of plug-in. Excuse me. It's not a plug-in filter for a room. It's a plug-in filter that goes, excuse me for 1 second. I have to get a drink of water here. Sorry.
No problem. And also Barbara said they do use PLC meters in Rappahannock County. So just a note.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with PLC. I know that some meters use them. So what I was, I don't know why I'm losing my voice here, but what I was saying is you have to make an outlet for L1 and an outlet for L2, split the 220 coming in 110 and 110, and you have, you know, an outlet on either side of the power panel. And they plug in there by the power panel. They're not room filters. So I just wanted to make that distinction. It's a very different type of solution than the Stetzer filters, just so everybody understands that.
Let's see. One more question from the chat, and then I'm going to go to the Facebook question. Harmonizing products used by Dr. Carrie Madej, emfsoul.com. So people are curious about the EMF Soul products. I don't know if you've heard of those, Mary, and if not, that's fine. We can look those up. And
so just a general thing about harmonizers and a lot of these alternative fixes. Each one is very different, and we can't really say what it does because we'd have to test it. But in general, they don't do very much. I mean, they might do something, but we recommend like a full professional product. These are in addition to, like, if you want to try any of these things, it's in addition to these other things. And that's a very general statement because some are made better than others and some are just pure junk. So we can't really comment on any one specific one unless we were to look. But in general, the thing is always complement with professional fixes.
okay, so from the Facebook group, it says, and then I'll come back to your question, India. That's a good one. So from the Facebook group, it says, can we please talk about distinguishing the RF radiation from smart meters, which mostly radiates out away from the house versus the dirty electricity they cause? And I think we covered that, but I don't know if there's anything additional you'd like to add to that at all.
Yeah, well, one way you can make sure that you cut back on your dirty electricity, the conducted emissions, that's a professional term for it, is to get rid of dimmer switches. So anything that has a high draw on voltage will create dirty electricity, like when you plug in your pool, you know, your pool filters and things like that. So one of the ways of actually reducing dirty electricity is to look and see what you have plugged into your wall sockets and see if you can change them, or anything that you plug in. So there's things that are very particular to putting dirty electricity on the line, and you know, the CFLs and the LEDs produce their own signature on the line.
Another person says, will a Faraday cloth hung inside the house over the area of switches directly opposite the meter help? And we've addressed this as well, but there's Faraday cloth could be replaced by several different materials that are sold on the market right now. So why don't you answer it in terms of anything, you know, hung inside opposite the meter?
It depends on what frequencies you're trying to get rid of. And as far as I know, Swiss Shield is the highest gigahertz that it shields. So you have to be careful about what the range of frequencies are. And for instance, you will get different measurements on different meters depending on what the ranges are. And I know with the tri-field, you know, I'm always defending the tri-field. It goes down lower than other meters, so it's measuring different things. So you can't just compare apples and oranges and say that they should be reading the same thing. So you have to be very, very careful when you're choosing products to check the range that it's able to capture, and know what and you should know what your environment is in your house as well. So you know that you're actually capturing, you know, the right frequency range. You know, maybe you don't have millimeter wave around you. So, you know, why would you go and buy the top line product if you don't have that frequency? Unless, again, if you're highly sensitive, I would just go and do that anyway. Like, you know, do a house survey for sure, but accuracy is not as important as just getting really good protection, because then it really doesn't matter if your environment changes. A survey is a snapshot like a photograph, and we all know year after year, you're going to look different. And that's the way EMFs are too. They're going to look different next year. So as being a sensitive, I just say, I'm going to get the top of the line because I know my environment's going to change, and it's X now and it's going to be Y tomorrow. So you can't keep spending money to redo your house, redo these surveys. It's just best to think ahead.
We've gotten a couple questions regarding the opt-out in Virginia. And so I realized I had forgotten to address that when I was at the beginning of all of this. I'm sure some of you are on this call because you don't want to sign the opt-out. I myself have chosen not to sign the opt-out. So I have a smart meter on the side of my house right now. And the reason I've decided not to sign the opt-out, and again, this is a very personal decision, I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing, is because it's a contract of adhesion, which means one party is more powerful than the other. So it was essentially a take it or leave it type of contract. And on top of that, they're basically saying in the contract that you're the only one signing, by the way, that this is an interim solution that they're giving you, which means at some point they're going to change that. And I don't know we don't know. I mean, these things are going to get upgrades every 5 to 7 years. So what that means, we're not sure. And it essentially has you signing into something that you previously were not signed into. So that was my own personal view on it. And just something we wanted to address because we did get several questions regarding the opt-out. The other thing that is being said, and this is a question that you can answer maybe, Mary, but basically Dominion or other companies are telling homeowners that the non-communicating opt-out meter is better than the analog meter. And so this particular individual and a couple others were wondering, what are some tips regarding that argument? If you still have your analog looking meter, because it's most likely an AMR meter, which still does communicate, but much less, and it does not put dirty electricity on the lines. It has the 5 dials though, so it looks like an electromechanical analog meter. If you still have that and your power company is trying to convince you to upgrade, and by telling you that the non-communicating meter is safer, what are some tips on how to refute that?
Well, we have to go to my cliffhanger in my pitch. We didn't get to finish the pitch because that was part of the big surprise that was supposed to be at the end. So I don't know where you want to fit that in, my UK cliffhanger.
Do you want me to pull it up real quick?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of time we have for people to stay on the line.
Well, people, people are welcome to stick around if you can. Whoever can stay with us, please do. And if not, there will be a recording of this call sent out, so you can always play this, the parts that you missed as well.
I laughed so hard when I listened to this video. I didn't even plan on finding it, but I thought it would be a very entertaining video for people to watch. The link is in there in the time or the minute marker for where to play the whole video. It's very hard to hear, and you can click on the to display the voice communication, so you can actually verify what she's saying, because they did the recording in the UK and it's in a cafe, so you hear all the clanging and banging, but you can definitely hear what she says as far as the solution.
Okay, why don't we, and I mentioned this earlier to you, why don't you and I just record your presentation, your entire presentation separately, and we'll send that out. So that
Okay.
way we can, because I feel like switching back and forth between screens will get a little complicated for me.
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing about the remainder of the pitch is that in Dr. Klinghart's video, he points to the safe level that he has determined from the clients that, or the patients he has seen as being 5 microwatts per meter squared. And that is in between the building biology and the lowest, the building biology is the lowest level, and then the actual limits. It's in between those two. You'll see it on the slide. I might not have gotten that exactly correct where it falls, but it's 5 microwatts per meter squared. And I could give you the page number. It's on page 21 of the pitch. Oh, it's in between the bioinitiative report and the building biology levels. And the precautionary is less than 1,000 microwatts per meter squared, and the building biology is less than 0.1 microwatts per meter squared. And that's really hard to achieve. So Dr. Klinghart says you put the Swiss shield on the windows and you do the Y shield on the walls in order to get that and you shut off everything. That was part of his solution. So I just wanted to put that out there because we're talking numbers and accuracy and doing surveys, and that was his conclusion.
And all of this can seem overwhelming too, at least to me. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So, you just do one thing at a time, test it, and just keep doing the best you can because, we're surrounded by it right now. So if you can mitigate one thing at a time, that's the best way to do it. So India, just a couple more questions and then we will close. India asked, Mary, have you looked into a whole house isolation transformer? If one had the money, would this be best? Sorry, now my brain caught up with that.
Again, each product works differently, and you really have to understand how it works before you buy it and if it's compatible with what you have there. For the most part, if you've already done the initial things of checking, to make sure you have proper wiring and you know what your EMF environment looks like what it is you're trying to protect yourself against. Is it just dirty electricity? Is it a tower? Because these things enter into the types of solutions that you would use. But I'm plugging Bill Bathgate's stuff, even though it's expensive, because it's made differently. And I've bought all the other filters. So an in-house filter is probably the most effective because it gets it at the source. So it's just like anything else. If you let something go 100 feet down the line inside your house, it's a lot harder to mitigate it, like to do a wall socket. It's a lot harder to do something with it. So you get it at the source, a whole inline filter at the power panel, or these other ones, he calls it the DNA filter. He sells 2 different kinds on his website. And Jenny, I think you have some slides on that, don't you, on his products?
Yes, I do. And actually, before I pull that up, I have one of his covers right here. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is what makes this different is that it absorbs the radiation versus like something like a Faraday cage or a piece of metal, like Charles asked, would reflect the radiation, which puts it back in the house and back on the lines. And so it does have the whole, I emailed him and I was like, which side do I point it to? Which was kind of a dumb question. I realize now you point it down. So it's not at anybody or at the side of your house. This particular one is the one with the magnets. I do have one. Again, we're not, we only talk about things that have been tested or that we use ourselves. So the things that are on our website, useful products, there's only a couple websites right now because these are things that we have personally used and or tested and believe in them. So this is what I have on the side of my house. I don't have the magnetic version. I did have somebody drill mine in, which wasn't that hard. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that. I don't know if you can see the inside, but this has the absorbing material on the inside. And then that way it has the hole like Marianne talked about, so the radiation can leave.
Now, Marianne's solution was to put the absorbing material on the inside of the wall. So again, if you put it on the inside of the cover, you're getting it at the source, so it reflects a lot less back. So you're attenuating by 30% before it starts reflecting back. So that's why, you know, you might want to put it both places. You might want to put it in the cover and then on the other side of the house. So you're getting it, you know, kind of absorbing as much as you can, you know, before it, you know, distributes throughout the house. Plus, Jenny, do you want to put our affiliate links up there in the chat? Or,
Oh, yeah, whoops, these are my notes that I just screen shared. Sorry. Hold on. I was writing everybody's questions down because I feel like that would be helpful to have this on our website somewhere.
yeah, they're having a sale today. You know, I know that Mary Ann had mentioned it, but it's really a good deal no matter what product you're going to buy. If it's a meter, you know, at Safe Living Technologies, and of course, Bill Bathgate's
So-
stuff is a little bit more unique and more pricey, but still to be under consideration by people who are highly sensitive.
So this is, I'll put this in the website. This is our info page that's constantly being updated regarding smart meters. We just put this new smart meter fire and potential causes PDF that's 66 pages on here. This was a presentation Bill Bathgate did for New York for a bill, but it has a lot of great information regarding smart meters. And if you scroll down, this is where we did a PDF that's pretty comprehensive regarding, we took Dominion's frequently asked questions, and, you know, the PDFs, we downloaded them and we responded to every question or every statement that they made. So we call this the claims versus fact sheet. So on the left side, you'll see their claims, and on the right side, you'll see our responses or rebuttals we have everything linked as well. So you can have a lot of resources in here. And then on that same page, right next to it is the consumer chart that I talked about at the beginning. That shows that our options here, and just realize that if you are going to opt out of the non-communicate or opt out of, I'm sorry, of the smart meter, they will ask you to sign most of the companies will ask you to sign something. So just to note, and here is the Safe Living Technologies website. This is on our site as well. If you go up here under resources and useful products. Oh wait, I actually think I pulled that up. This needs to be updated. We don't have our affiliate link updated on that, but here is Bill Bathgate's stuff. He does not sell the meter cover with the hole in the front anymore because kind of for obvious reasons, you don't want it pushing out, you know, towards your neighbor or towards your kids in the yard or whatnot. So he actually puts them all on the side. And like I said, you would face it down. And then here's the Safe and Sound Pro, which is on the Safe Living Technologies. And you can enter the code there to get a discount. And I think that's it. So thank
Jenny,
you.
we didn't put the whole house filter in there, but
Well, it's on his website. So if you
Yeah,
just
that's
go
what I was
to
gonna
DE
say.
Filters, DE Filters LLC, then he'll have all of his products on there. You can shop any of them. I can put that in
Yeah,
and
and these
then
are,
he has a little form you fill in that says who you heard about it from. And so, so you could just fill that in. Like we've disclosed, these are affiliate links, but we do not put anything on there that we don't use ourselves or fully believe in. So, and both Shield Your Body and DE Filters LLC both test their products rigorously. And so that was the other thing that we wanted. And you'll see on Bill Bathgate's website, he actually has a couple of Shield Your Body items, because he not only did the owner of Shield Your Body test his products in a lab, but then Bill Bathgate tested Shield Your Body's products as well. So there's double testing. So anyways, thank you all for joining us. And like I said at the beginning, we will be doing this again because I can tell people have questions. So if you think of anything after the call, you know, that you'd like us to answer on the next one, please feel free to send us an email at virginiansforsafetech@protonmail.org protonmail.com. And then you can visit our website to join our email list at virginiansforsafetech And then that's the .org. So thank you. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing here. The sign tamer was the name of that whole house filter for Indy.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kept getting the sign tamer and the signal tamer mixed up, and one's for the in-house filter, which is a sign tamer, and the signal tamer is a mesh net that you put over your router to reduce the, the range of the wireless router if you still have one. I apologize about sneaking in there at the end, Jenny.
No worries. No
Just
worries.
thought
I'm
it
glad
was
you got
getting-
that in there. Both
Yeah.
are helpful, so.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
you
Well,
either do the sign tamer or the DNA filters. One is an inline, it's a cheaper alternative, but not as robust as the ones that you plug in with the, you have to install new outlets and put them, plug the filters in to each outlet. So, anyhow, that was my last plug for Bill Bathgates. Again, not for everybody, but I want to emphasize that it takes a little bit of research to do a deep dive into why his stuff is different. And if you're highly sensitive, I definitely recommend it. Thank you.
yes. Okay, and with that, we are pressing end. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.